thanks for stopping by. Robert Kofed with Computer Creations. Hey, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Appreciate you stopping by. This channel deals with LightBurn and how to use it, Thunder laser products, and just laser products and laser processes in general. So if you're new, thanks for stopping by. If you're a returning subscriber, I certainly appreciate your support. So have you ever had a situation where somebody asks you to do something, you go, oh, sure, no problem, we can take care of that. And then you realize, I'm not sure I know how to do that. Well, that's what happened to me recently, and I wanted to share with you what happened and what I learned along the way. So my granddaughter is a senior in high school this year, and they get to decorate their parking spots. So they have an assigned parking spot and they get to doll it up however they want. And so she came to me, she had a design in mind, and she asked if I could create some stencils for her design. She's very meticulous, and so I knew that we just needed to make it perfect because that's the way she wanted it. Totally understand for that. And so what I soon realized is I've made a ton of stencils in my laser, but nothing to the magnitude that she needed it. Some of the stencils that she was going to need were going to be 7 feet across by 4 or 5 feet tall. Well, with a working area in my laser of 24 by 36, I knew that I had to figure out how to tile the different artboards that we were going to use together so she could go ahead and tape those together, put it down on her parking spot, and paint what she wanted to do. And initially it took me a little time to figure out, and what I thought I'd do is I'm going to share that process in LightBurn with you today. It's not hard to do, but there's a few ground rules that you definitely need to follow if you want all of this to come together. The minute you get multiple pieces that you're going to cut out on your laser and put them together and have them all coherent at the end, that's the key. And so I'll share with you what I learned today. It's going to be all laser, LightBurn and laser related today. But once you learn this process, you could make a stencil however big you need. I use the cut shapes tool in LightBurn today a lot. And if you've never used that tool, it's perfect for this kind of an application. There are some tricks to it that you've got to just keep in mind as you're using it. But you're going to see once we jump into LightBurn that once you get the process down, it can go very quickly. So let's jump into LightBurn. I'm going to show you the layout. The layout is about 7 feet wide and about 15 feet tall. I do that in multiple sections. And we have a kind of a heart-shaped volleyball. We've got several lines of text. And before you know it, we're going to have a bunch of stencils cut out. And then I'll show you at the end, I'll show you a picture on how it turned out. So hang in there with me. I sure appreciate all the support. Let's get into LightBurn. So we'll jump into LightBurn here. And before we get into actually designing the layout for these stencils, I wanted to give you an idea of the scope of this project. This hatched area that you see here is 36 inches wide by 24 inches tall. And as I zoom out here, you're going to see kind of the scope of the layout of this design. So this black rectangle that you see here is the size of the parking spot, and it's roughly 9 feet wide by 20 feet tall. And then this is the granddaughter's layout on what she wanted to have done and have stencils made for. So that's kind of where we're headed. This layout does two different things for us. It gives us the ability not only to see how it's going to look once it's actually down in the parking spot, but also it will give us a great idea on how far we've got to measure over from the white line that separates the parking spots over to where we're going to start laying out our stencils. And so what I did was I was able to go ahead and do a drawing, a simple drawing. So when we got on site and we had all these stencils made, we could measure from the top down, and we knew where we started our 2025 stencils and basically worked from the top down. And it worked out really well. without this guide, it would just be a lot harder to kind of lay it out to make sure that when it's all said and done, it's uniform in the way it looks. And so if you're going to do something large like this, even though you've got this 24 by 36 work area over here, I would highly recommend that you design your overall look. And that way, not only will you have a set of stencils for doing something like this, but you'll have a map on how far you've got to measure over from, you know, a known line to where you can get this layout so it looks good. So this is our overall project. We've got just the year. One of the things that you'll notice is all these black squares. And each one of these squares is going to be a 28 inches wide by 22 inches tall. And that's the poster board that I found at a large grocery chain or, you know, a dollar store. You want to try to go as heavy as you can on the poster board. And it looks like that 22 by 28 size is pretty readily available in most areas. And it was easy to cut on the laser. I'll kind of give you some hints about that a little bit later in the video. So everything that we're going to lay out is going to be based on us cutting it out of a 22 by 28 piece of poster board. And let's get into it, and I'll show you how we're going to get started. Step one is you're going to go ahead and create the outline of your poster board. So we're going to come over here to our rectangle tool. I'm just going to draw out a rough shape. I really don't care what it is. I'm going to turn this on so you can see it. And we're going to make sure that this is selected. And we're going to indicate the size of our poster board. So our width is going to be 28 inches. Tab, unlock this, 22 inches. And this is going to be the size of our poster board. I would just verify your poster board to make sure that it's truly that size. The products that I purchased were really close, right on the money of this dimension, and so I didn't have to worry about this. Now, one of the things about using the Cut Shapes tool is you will go through a lot of these, because when you have a shape inside of this box and you say Cut Shapes, this box is going to disappear. And so you've got to have lots of them kind of as extras. And so what I would do is I would just normally, now we're not going to have to do a Cut Shapes procedure on this year, but going when we start into our Volleyball Heart and that kind of stuff, we're going to start using the Cut Shapes tool. And you will see that your rectangles that are illustrating the poster board, when you use that tool, they disappear. So you're going to have extra ones that you can go ahead and substitute for them. It's just part of the process. And so we would make 2 of those. And so I'm going to just hit Control and hit the letter D to duplicate that. I'm going to just grab this, come over here. One other thing that you're going to want to make sure that you have turned on for this project is come up here to the gear icon, open it up, and make sure that you have Snap to Objects on. Snap to Grid off and Snap to Objects on. And you're going to see why. So when we have that turned on, I can grab this corner and I can snap it to the other corner. So these are now perfectly lined up. And I don't have to worry about much alignment issues. If I grab a corner and want to snap it to the adjoining corner, if your Snap to Objects is on, it makes it really easy. Then all you'd have to do is you want to try to, if you're going to do text, you want to either pick a stencil font or you're going to have to do some node editing. The granddaughter wanted this specific font and it wasn't Stencil. So if we hadn't built this little bridge here, when I cut these out of the poster board, this middle would just fall out and it would just look like a big hole and not a 0. So you want to make sure that you're using either stencil fonts or you have the ability to node edit to be able to create bridges so the middle of your letters don't fall out. And it's a matter of sizing and centering these in that 22 by 28 outline, and it's really as simple as that. The overall general idea is going to be you're always going to be lining these up top to bottom, and that way when we get into a little bit bigger design, we don't have to second guess where the spacing's supposed to be. You're just going to lay them side by side, run a piece of tape down here. You can lay this on the asphalt, paint your numbers, and you're good to go. So the first part of this was kind of a piece of cake, not a big deal. But the minute we get into the curved text, you're going to see that now this piece of curved text actually takes 3 for the top and 3 for the bottom. And so we'll just want to make sure that you keep things lined up. So that the 2025 is kind of a no-brainer, no big deal there. Next, we're going to actually jump into this Volleyball Heart. I'll show you how to create that. And this is where we're going to start to use the Cut Shapes tool. Okay, so let's jump in to sizing this heart and cutting it into 4 equal parts. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to take, remember we duplicated this, we lined these 2 sections up. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight those or select those 2. I'm going to hit Control and hit D to duplicate those again. So we've got 4. I'm going to go ahead and grab a corner and snap it together, and now all 4 of these are aligned. And when you're doing your layout, you want to make sure that you can, this is just a simple shape of a heart. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to center this. And so what I want to probably do, I'm going to go ahead and group these right quick. And then to center this heart into this 4-panel design, I'm just going to select my heart. I'm going to hold the Shift key down. I'm going to select my grouped bunch of layouts, and then I'm just going to hit the bullseye tool. And that's going to bring us, so that heart, that single shape is going to be centered in amongst those 4 smaller sheets. Okay, so now we've got a design where we've got the heart itself is 48 inches wide by 42 inches tall. You can see clearly there's no way we would be able to deal with this in our laser if we didn't break it up into smaller parts. Okay, so step 1 is I created my grid big enough for the graphic that the size that I wanted. Make sure it fits, and make sure that you have extra of these rectangles, because when we go into the Cut Shapes tool, these rectangles are going to disappear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and select this. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate. I'm just going to use some arrows to move this up because we're going to need these as we go through our process. I'm sure there's other ways to do this. This is just the way that worked for me. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the Cut Shapes tool. And what I will tell you is sequence matters when you're using the Cut Shapes tool, and I'll show you how that functions. So right now we have these 4 shapes. I'm going to go ahead and ungroup them. Okay, so they're 4 individual boxes, but they've all been lined up and they're snapped to each other, so there's no overlap. I've centered the graphic in those 4 rectangles, and then we're going to move to the Cut Shapes tool. Okay, when we use the Cut Shapes tool, we want to make sure that number 1, we're not dealing with grouped elements. So you notice my heart is not grouped in any way. My 4 different panels are not grouped. And so what the object of Cut Shapes is that I'm going to use this as kind of a cookie cutter to cut out or to break up this design. So when I select the heart, right, the entire heart, and then I hold the Shift key down and I select this panel, what I'm going to tell LightBurn is I want you to cut right here and right here on this shape without having to do any node editing. And so it's a very precise way to cut something up. You want to make sure that you don't select frame first and then the shape that you want to cut. You always want to make sure that you're saying, I want to break this, hold the Shift key down with this. And once I do that, then all I've got to do is come up to the Tools menu. down, if you've done it right, if you've made your selection correctly, this cut shapes tool will be lit up. And if you say cut shapes, you're going to say, well, my rectangle went away, and you know what happened. And what you don't see until you select the heart is now that's been pieced off. Okay, so now we can cut this heart into 4 individual pieces and make sure that they fit in each one of our elements. So at this point, we'll do that again. I'm going to just Control Z and back this up. So again, if we wanted this section, we're going to select the heart itself. We're going to hold the Shift key down. We're going to select the rectangle. We're going to come up here to Tools, Cut Shapes. You notice it disappears. If I select this section, now it's just this section of the heart. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cut all 4 shapes, and then we're going to take these 4 fragmented pieces and put them back in the rectangles, because these are the shapes that we're going to put in the, these are the sheets that we're going to put in the laser and actually cut out this shape. So let's do that right quick. So we'll just start here at the top. We're going to select that heart, hold the Shift key down, select the rectangle, make sure that they're not grouped, come up to Tools, Cut Shapes, and I'm just going to move around. Down here, hold the Shift key down, Tools, Cut Shapes. Cut Shapes. You can do the Alt-Shift-C as well. And now we've got a heart that is in 4 different pieces. And we didn't have to do any node editing. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take these and put them up in these boxes and we'll be ready to have stencils, so we can put this in the laser, cut them out, and we'll have our heart stencil. So let's go ahead and move these fragmented pieces of the heart up into these new worksheets. And it's real easy. I'm just going to grab this one, and all I've got to do is make sure that this edge lines up with this edge, and this edge lines up with this edge. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to take and I'm going to hold the Shift key and the Control key down at the same time. I'm going to arrow over, and I'm just going to slowly drive that thing to where it's just touching that line. Right there. Now, I know that I'm going to probably have to move up, right? So all I'm going to do, I'm going to leave it selected. I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to hold the Shift key and the Control key, and I'm going to use the up arrow until we've got the end of that goes to that line. Right there. And that's all it takes to get that aligned. So let's do that for the other pieces. So I'm going to grab this other piece, and I'm going to try to get it as close as I can so I don't have to drive it too far. And we're going to go ahead and Shift, Control, and left arrow. Make sure looks like I need to take this one and go to the right just a little bit. There we go. And then this one can go up to match the other one. And then we'll go ahead and come down here to make sure that it's touching the bottom like it should be. Looks like it could go up just ever so slightly. Right there. And now we've got the top 2 lobes of the heart done. Come down here. Select it. Lots of ways to do this, guys. All we're going to do is just drive this into place. Remember, I'm holding the Shift key and the Control key at the same time. And just using my arrow keys to drive this in, you can see that down here, make sure we're lined up there. Looks like we could go over just a little bit. Right there. And now these are lined up. Yep, that looks good. Okay, we got one more and our heart stencil will be completed. You just come up here, we're going to get it close. The biggest thing that I see a lot of people do is they don't zoom in near as much as they should. You really need to be zooming in so you can see what you're doing. And so don't be afraid to zoom right in on this stuff. So we're going to just drive this right into place. Just like that. And if everything's adding up here, we're going to probably have to go over just a little bit. There we go. And it looks like we've got it. We're all lined up. So boom, there you've got your heart stencil. So now what I would do is I would go ahead and group, I would ungroup everything, make sure that we don't have anything grouped. I would select this panel, group it, this panel, group it. Each one of these panels needs to be grouped. That way, when I select this and move it, it comes as a whole piece. So now I could go ahead and stick the sheet in the laser, and I can go ahead and this red line is going to be my cut line. And that's all there is to it, literally. So we'll be able to show you some of the things that I did in the laser, and we can generate this. And so now that we've got our heart taken care of, I can come back here and snap it back into place if I want. And our heart stencil is done. So let's go ahead and send one of these sheets to the laser, and I'll show you my setup. It's pretty simple. I'm going to use user origin. I'm going to be top left-hand corner. You can see by the red dot, or the green dot that we're right up here. I've selected the upper left-hand side of the lobe of the heart, and I'm going to go ahead and preview it and make sure that the only thing it's showing me is just that it's going to cut out this section on that piece of paper. That looks good. I'm using an 1.5-inch lens. We're going to do 300 millimeters per second at 30% power. And I am going to do 2 passes. And what I found is if I try to do it in one pass, it scorches the edges of the paper. If I use less power and 2 passes, it cuts it beautifully and there's no burn marks or anything like that. So that's what I'm going to do. And so let's go ahead and send it to the Thunder Nova 35100. And let's jump over there to the laser and I'll show you my setup. Okay, here's my setup. First thing that I'll tell you is put something like this in so it's repeatable. So when you're feeding these sheets of poster board in, that the setup's the same, so your origin is always the same. I'm going to top left upper corner is going to be my origin. If I can remember, I'll put a link to these little jigs. They're pretty handy. And at this point, we can go ahead and cut this out. So let me get set up, and pretty easy cut. The other thing that you want to do when you get this set up is you just want to run your laser down and make sure that red light follows the edge of that paper, just to make sure that you're nice and square both top and bottom. Otherwise it's going to come out wonky. And so you want to make sure that you set your origin properly in that corner and then run it out the top too, just to make sure that that red light is following that paper. Looks like it is. So I think we're good to go. Okay, we're all set up. Let's cut the top of this heart out. You see how it cut out some of it, but didn't cut out all of it. So now it's going to go back and make that second pass. Boom. And just like that, you've got actually two different stencils. You've got this one here, but the one that we're going to use is this outer stencil. I use nice thin magnets. That helps hold things down. But this right here is the top left-hand corner of our heart. I would just label it up here so when you get out in the field, you know which way you're supposed to lay it. And that's really all there is to it, to these stencils. Okay, next we're going to do the inside of the heart with a volleyball. And her idea was that she wanted to have the shape of a heart, but be able to, so it looks like a volleyball, because that's one of the sports that she plays along with softball. So all I've done is I've taken a simple outline shape of a volleyball. I've lined it up with the heart, and just remember, you always want to have extras in case you mess this up. So I've got an extra heart sitting here. I've got an extra volleyball sitting here. And so all I did here is I just sized the volleyball roughly in the same size as the heart. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the heart. I'm going to select the volleyball that's grouped, and I'm going to come down here to the subtract function. If you haven't used this for function, this Boolean function, it's a great tool. So I'm going to just say subtract, and you notice that it cut off everything that was on the outside of that heart. The other thing it did is it closed all of these what would be open shapes if you didn't use these tools. It saves you a ton of time for node editing. So now we've got our basic volleyball outline, but these are going to be pretty thin. And so what I wanted to do is grow them a little bit bigger in order to give it a little bolder outline, because these are not very big. And you can see sometimes it looks like it got confused right here. We've got some cleanup to do here. So I'll go ahead and get those cleaned up, get the node editing done. All we've got to do is ungroup this, come up here, turn on my node editing, and I can highlight all these nodes, hit D for delete, and we can straighten this stuff up. Here we go. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to just go around and offset these, and I'll go ahead and fix this right here too. So this probably looks like it's a little bit of a mess here. And we'll play with that and get it dialed in so it looks right. Again, most of this stuff is, as you well know, is never straightforward and easy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add this line. Get rid of these nodes. Straighten these up a quick bit. Way too many nodes in here. Just straightened out just a little bit. All right, you get the idea. So now that what we're going to do next is I'm going to go back to my select tool, and we're just going to offset these just a little bit. So these will be offset, and we're going to grow up these lines so they're bigger. We're going to delete the lines that are the originals, and these will be quite a bit wider. Next, we're going to do a quick outline on these. So I'm going to make sure all these things are highlighted. And I will probably just get rid of these because they're going to generate a problem for us later. So we're just going to go ahead and make sure this is selected. Go to our offset tool. I'm going to offset this outward by 1/2 inch. And that should be roughly good enough. And then if I want to delete the original, I could just turn this on. So if we say OK, now you notice that our lines for our volleyball are much bigger than they were to begin with. And that's going to be good for the size of template that we have. So next we're going to go ahead and we're going to fit this into this. And so we've got to create an outline. And so that's next. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead. I've duplicated this heart again. Remember, we're always going to have our spares over here. I'm going to take this heart. Remember, you never want to resize it because it's fitting inside the template that we've already got created. So you don't want to resize this heart. We can resize this portion if we need to. That's not a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a border and I want to offset to the inside. I'm going to create that there. I want to offset it 3/4 inch. Oops, 0.75. And that should create a 3/4 inch border on the inside. And we don't want to delete any of the originals. We're going to say OK. And at this point, for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to group it. And we're going to also turn it black because we're going to merge these two shapes. So now at this point, what I can do is I can take this over here. If I want to spin it, where it fits a little better, where it looks a little better, you can certainly do that. Next, we're going to go ahead and all I've done here is I've tweaked this insert. So the edges of this design in black are in between the heart and the heart offset. Okay, I just want to make sure that all the edges are touching. And you're going to see why here in just a second. I'm going to use the Union Boolean tool. And that's going to create a border and merge this outside with the inside and we'll be good to go. So you can see all I did is I node edited just a little bit up here. I just moved it around because all of the rest of this stuff is going to be deleted. All these little curves in here are going to be gone. So you just want to make sure that your entire design edges fit in between the two red layers of the heart. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to select the black. I'm going to hold the Shift key down and hold the heart. And you notice that the two heart outlines are grouped. That's important. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to come down here to the Union tool. And when I click the Union tool, you're going to see that I merged the outside of the heart with the interior of the volleyball design. And now I have the ability, if I wanted to, I could come in here and node edit this and bring this up a little bit farther. You can tweak with it as much as you want, but that's going to be our primary design right now. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that we did with this. We're going to take a grid of 4. We're going to center it and then we're going to dice it up and do the cut shapes and we'll have this insert that goes in here. So that's next. Okay, we're going to cut this design up. It's been centered amongst these 4 panels. So in this particular case, you're going to want the heart grouped because there's so many elements. These are just a bunch of different elements. You definitely want this to be grouped. The squares are not grouped. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the heart, hold the Shift key down, select the rectangle, cut shapes, and we're going to do that 4 different times. And that's going to do it for cutting up the heart. And now we have 4 individual hearts sections. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to get 4 blank grids and we're going to place them. Oh, that one's not. Let me go back. And we definitely want to join that one up. Make sure that's grouped. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take the 4 grids, place these in the 4 grids, and we'll have our template cut out ready for the interior part of our volleyball. And now we'll have this to cut out and we'll have this to cut out. And you can see how powerful the Cut Shapes tool is when it comes to stencil. So I'll put these in the 4 grids so you can see what it looks like, and then we'll move on. Now we got the Volleyball Heart put together on the right, and the one on the left is good. And if you see, if I just grab this insets here. And the reason why you would want to do that is because you've got to have, remember, this is all paper out here, and you've got to have a border. So when you go to paint these lines, you're not, they're painting directly on the asphalt. So you've got to have a little bit of buffer. Matter of fact, we added some additional paper on the top here. So when we were, when we were painting it, we didn't get any additional paint on the asphalt. So we laid this down, then we laid this on top of that, got it all lined up, and put some weights along here, and we went to painting it. And I'll show you a picture here on what it looks like. It turned out pretty good. So we got the 2025 done. We've got the heart stencils ready to cut out. We're going to do Effort is a Choice next. And one of the things that we needed to do, she didn't want it flat. She wanted it arched in a way. And so our best approach was we laid this text out. We figured about how high she wanted it. And we used the text modification tool to arch this text. So it would fit on 3 different pieces of that 22 by 28 material. And then what we had to do is, this was text. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to convert it to a path. And then from there, we could go ahead and do the same thing that we've been doing. We'd select these items, hold down Shift, select the border, say Cut Shapes. And what would happen is it would take and it would cut this. So this is not part of that first sheet. It's on the second sheet. So if you can see, if I move this away, oops, if I take this and I take that, oh, it looks like they're all in grouped here. Let's group that, and then group that. And then if we pull it away, you can see that the bottom part of that R is actually on the second sheet or the middle sheet, not on this sheet. And so it works the same on text as it does on a design. You just want to make sure that you convert it to a path before you do it, and you'll be good to go. And that's really as simple as it is. Did the same thing here. You can see that we had to cut off a little bit of the foot for it to be in the third sheet. And you just, once you get these done, you don't want to change the alignment in any way, because remember, we're laying these so they're tiled, so they line up. And so it wasn't hard at all to do the text. Just getting them, like I said, I would highly recommend using stencil text, so you don't have to come in here. I had to come in here and do all this node editing on the A and the B, so these middles didn't fall out. So just be cognizant of that. Like I said, if you're fairly new to this kind of stuff, just use a stencil font and you won't have to worry about it. Then when it comes to the baseball, the softball, we did the same thing as we did with the heart. We just created the size, a round circle. We divided it in 4 equal sections, and then we took the laces and divided those up in 4 equal sections. And the way this worked is when we laid this stencil down, we could paint the interior portion a lime green color, or the softball lime green color, let it dry, and then we cut out the stencils for the lace work, laid them over this stencil here, and painted those red. And so we had red laces over the yellow paint, and it worked out great. The only other thing we had to do is take this number 12 and place it where she wanted it here and paint that last. And this is what it ended up looking like. As you can see, it turned out really good. She was happy with it. It was a learning project for me. I had not generated stencils like this before, but they're really not hard to do once you understand how the Cut Shapes tool works. And I hope this information was helpful. I sure appreciate it. Well, as you can see, if you take a project like this and just break it up into smaller bites, it's not too bad at all. I think learning in how to use the Cut Shapes tool was key in this project. And I'll be the first to admit that there's lots of different ways you could have approached this project. This is just the way that I chose to do it. Again, I hadn't used the Cut Shapes tool much before now, but I can certainly see that that Cut Shapes tool process will be in my future for a number of different things, especially if you have an item that needs to be cut up and you don't want to do a bunch of node editing to do it. The Cut Shapes tool can be fantastic for those kind of applications. So I hope you guys enjoyed the content. You learned something. If you enjoyed the content, if you give me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you have the ability, hit that thanks button and contribute to the channel. It's those contributions that are making this content possible. Until next time, thanks and have a great day.